Because I was there. It didn't kick in. It didn't kick in. When the nurses came in and told you, can they talk to you about yourself? I'm like, no. Just go ahead and put it out there. I was wrong. Yeah, and they said you had chlamydia. You know the S6 didn't kick in. They said, well, I do a C-section. Guess what? You refused. You didn't want to mess up your little tattoo. Or you didn't want to get cut, right? Don't worry. When your mama S6 was that thing. Because you sat through that infected canal, right? You did. You did that. So, don't do that. When I encourage you, I keep asking you, leave me alone. You don't play with my children now, right? You play with my children. Talking about my grandbaby, like... And you know, it's crazy. We would never talk about Chrisean because he's special and we really love him. But yo, you are foul. You are foul and disgusting.
Karlissa didn't whisper. She didn't hint. She fired a verbal bazooka straight into the Blueface Chrisean universe and claimed that all the confusion, chaos, and silent eyebrow raises surrounding Little Junior weren't mystery accidents, but the direct result of Chrisean's choices. And the way she said it, you'd think she just leaked national security files instead of family tea. This wasn't drama. This was a digital earthquake. She spoke like someone who'd been holding back screenshots, voice notes, and 3 terabytes of emotional receipts, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash them like a villain monologue in the final act of a blockbuster. According to Karlissa, the puzzle pieces behind JR's situation never lined up because Chrisean scrambled them on purpose. Bad decisions, blurred timelines, confusing behavior, and enough contradictions to make a detective sweat. The internet didn't know whether to clutch pearls or pop popcorn. Suddenly, Karlissa's old comments started sounding prophetic. Those crazy rants from months ago. Now they felt like early warnings wrapped in chaos. People paused, replayed, and stared at the screen like they'd just spotted a plot twist hiding in plain sight. Because if Karlissa's right, then every emotional storm around Junior wasn't accidental drama. It was fallout from choices made long before the truth ever reached the public. Karlissa didn't explode overnight. This story didn't fall from the sky like random drama debris. It took months of cryptic hints, side-eyed comments, sudden lives, deleted captions, and that eerie kind of motherly tone where someone sounds less angry and more disappointed. She'd been hinting since the beginning that something about Junior wasn't being explained honestly. People laughed at her, called her dramatic, told her to log off. But now, those same voices are digging through archives like digital historians, realizing Karlissa might have been dropping breadcrumbs the whole time while everyone scrolled past them thinking she was just being loud. She opened the door with a claim that sliced through social media like a blade. The confusion, the unanswered questions, the inconsistencies around Junior weren't cosmic coincidences or innocent misunderstandings. They were fallout. Fallout from choices Chrisean made long before the public ever saw a picture of the baby. They called it bitter jealousy. They called it clout chasing. They called it everything except what Karlissa insisted it was, cause and effect. The storm didn't just arrive, it was built, brick by questionable brick. And she swore she watched each piece fall into place while the world treated her like an unreliable narrator in her own family's biography. The online world did what it always does. They dug for timelines. Suddenly, old lives resurfaced. Clips that were ignored months ago got pulled into the spotlight like evidence. The dates never aligned perfectly. One video suggesting one thing, another post implying something different. And in between them all stood Chrisean, the internet's queen of chaos, acting like confusion was a personality trait instead of a warning flag. Karlissa pointed to those gaps with the sharpness of someone who'd been waiting for people to finally pay attention and admit that the puzzle only made sense if you rearranged the pieces in a harsher, less flattering way. People assumed it was just mother-in-law spite. They thought Karlissa was reaching, stretching, doing Olympic-level gymnastics to blame Chrisean for anything that didn't sparkle. But she didn't talk like someone inventing a scandal. She spoke like someone who watched consequences form in real time and kept receipts because she knew the day would come when everyone demanded proof. Her tone wasn't hysterical, it was controlled. The unsettling calm of someone who already cried long before the cameras were rolling. Nobody expected that energy. And it turned the internet's mockery into curiosity faster than a trending hashtag. Then she spoke on Junior, not with cruelty, but with that heavy implication only parents and grandparents understand. That's something about his early circumstances. His environment, the chaos surrounding him from the moment his name hit the web, could be traced back to decisions that weren't innocent. And when Karlissa said she tried to warn people, tried to wave the flag, tried to point out the red lights while everyone argued about who was the villain, suddenly her past rants didn't sound unhinged. They sounded like someone yelling fire in a crowded room that was too busy recording for TikTok to realize the smoke was real. She never said Chrisean didn't love Junior. She didn't paint herself as the savior. Instead, she made a subtler claim that love isn't enough if it comes packaged with instability, rash choices, and recklessness that spills onto an innocent child who didn't ask for an audience. The things Chrisean did when emotions ran wild, the impulsiveness she treated as flair, the wild swings that once looked like comedic chaos, Karlissa claimed those weren't harmless quirks. They were roots. Roots that later sprouted confusion around the child himself, from timelines to stories. From details to decisions, people tried to refute her by digging up old screenshots, only to realize the screenshots raised more questions. A caption that once felt random suddenly looked coded. A life full of rambling suddenly sounded like someone covering cracks with jokes. Every part of JR's early story, when replayed under Karlissa's accusations, felt less solid. Chrisean's fiery personality, the boldness that made her a public spectacle, now looked like the very force Karlissa believed sparked the issues that later exploded. And while everyone used to cheer for the rebellious chaos, now they wondered if that same chaos left scars no one wanted to acknowledge. Karlissa didn't just blame. She dissected. She highlighted moments where choices were made without thought, reactions that were filmed and posted like entertainment, outbursts treated like highlights instead of red flags. She emphasized that the internet glamorized the chaos, rewarded it, amplified it. Well, nobody bothered to ask what that meant for a child who didn't get a choice. If Junior became a symbol of confusion, a headline baby wrapped in viral fog, Karlissa implied it wasn't just fate. It was shaped by decisions that spiraled faster than anyone could control. She suggested that certain things never added up not because fate wrote a complicated story, but because someone else made it complicated. She implied that Chrisean's actions, reactions, relationships, emotional swings, and public battles bled into JR's life before he could even walk. And while everyone thought Karlissa was jealous or bitter, she was quietly tallying every moment that didn't make sense. When she finally spoke, it wasn't with a messy rant, it was with eerie clarity. Like someone who'd rehearsed the speech in her head 1,000 times because she knew the world wouldn't listen unless she delivered it calmly. The internet began asking uncomfortable questions. If Karlissa was lying, where was the furious denial? If she was exaggerating, why did some of her hints match old and unexplained details? If she was just stirring drama, why did she sound like someone who'd been sitting on truth long enough to get tired of silence? Blueface stayed oddly subdued, acting like everything was normal. That silence wasn't protective anymore. It looked like avoidance. Nobody expected him to tear into Hazel like he normally does. No petty clapbacks. No all-caps captions. Just a quiet vacancy that only made suspicion feel heavier. And that's when the tone shifted. This wasn't a petty family fight. It felt like a secret everyone sensed but nobody dared to say, until the loudest voice in the room finally did. The confusion around JR's story, the inconsistencies, the uncomfortable tension every time his name came up, Karlissa insisted it was all preventable. That the roots started long before the headlines. That the drama wasn't born, it was nurtured. And that the moment chaos became a sport, Junior became collateral. Whether people agreed or not, the implication stuck like glue. That Chrisean's actions set off a domino effect that eventually landed at JR's feet. And nobody wanted to talk about it until Karlissa forced the conversation out of hiding. She didn't close with rage. She closed with resignation. A tone that said she didn't want to be right. That she would have celebrated peace if peace existed. But since truth rarely arrives with balloons and confetti, she delivered hers like a warning letter shoved under a locked door. Whether the public embraced it or rejected it didn't matter, because once a claim like that is spoken, it can't be undone. The moment it left her lips, the entire storyline around Junior shifted forever, and Karlissa knew it. That's why she sounded unbothered. When you believe you're holding truth, you don't care who doubts it. You just wait for reality to catch up. The controversy didn't simmer into silence. It detonated. What started as a tense whisper from Karlissa erupted into wildfire commentary blazing across every platform with a pulse. Screenshots were dissected like sacred scrolls. Lives were replayed like NFL highlights. And in the middle of the smoke, the internet suddenly realized something terrifying. Karlissa wasn't speaking like a scorned relative desperate for a headline. She spoke with the confidence of someone who sat front row through every mistake and was done pretending those mistakes blew in through the window by accident. For months, people thought her rants were delusions. Now they sound like prophecy. Clips of Chrisean on edge, acting impulsive, making decisions that looked glamorous online but reckless under scrutiny, returned with new meaning. When she laughed off chaos like it was a badge of honor, the public used to cheer. After Karlissa's claims, those same moments looked like dominoes tipping toward JR's confusion. The replays were brutal. Memes once used to celebrate Chrisean's unfiltered energy now look like warning sirens that nobody recognized in time. Celebrities started chiming in with the subtlety of thunder. Influencers who swore they'd never speak on family matters suddenly found microphones. One reality star posted a cryptic message about children always being the silent victims without naming a soul, yet everyone interpreted it as an indirect nod to Karlissa's bomb. Another artist reposted Karlissa's clip with the caption, "When receipts speak louder than fake peace, no names." No details, but intent dripping so heavily that the comment section exploded like popcorn kernels in boiling oil. It didn't help that Chrisean had built a reputation on emotional chaos. The internet rewound every shouting match, every unfiltered live, every public meltdown. Suddenly, nothing looked harmless. Everything looked like a giant red flag waving in slow motion. Fans found old videos where Karlissa pleaded for the baby to be shielded from drama. Back then, people mocked her, calling her toxic, jealous, stubborn. Now, those same clips resurfaced like eerie premonitions. Her voice, once dismissed as noise, turned into a warning that echoed louder with every replay. And of course, Twitter, the world's unofficial investigation bureau, treated the situation like a national scandal. Threads dissected timelines, compared statements, pulled screenshots from the digital abyss. Someone posted a chart analyzing dates that never aligned. Another wrote a theory that went viral, claiming Chrisean blurred events around JR's early life because even she didn't want the full truth pinned down. It wasn't confirmed. It wasn't disproven. And because Karlissa's tone sounded like she'd witnessed those decisions firsthand. The theories grew thicker than Los Angeles wildfire smoke. Karlissa's claims that certain choices from Chrisean contributed to the confusion around Junior caught traction like an echo with perfect reverb. If this were just petty blame, the internet would have tossed it aside. But her voice carried conviction. That's what got under everyone's skin. She didn't sound like someone creating a villain. She sounded like a frustrated witness, exhausted from watching chaos be packaged as entertainment while a child stood in the crossfire. The quiet suggestion that Chrisean's patterns, the impulsive behavior, the emotional detonations, the inconsistent stories contributed to the fog around Junior hit harder than any direct insult. Reaction channels went wild. One commentator compared the situation to the Amber Heard legal documentaries, calling the internet digital detectives sniffing for the truth under layers of Instagram filters. Another joke that Zeus networks should have trademarked. The whole saga since it felt like one of their plotlines swallowed by real life. Someone else compared it to early seasons of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, except messier, raw, and with way more accidental confession energy. And the memes. Oh, the memes were ruthless. Side-by-side screenshots of Karlissa warning months ago versus the current fallout spread like a virus. People captioned her face with "when they finally realized you weren't crazy." Just early, edits of Chrisean's most chaotic moments circulated with text overlays like the flags were neon. "We just thought it was aesthetic." Even comedians weighed in, joking that Junior deserved diplomatic immunity from internet warfare at this point. Beneath the sarcasm, though, was a chilling shift. Everyone was finally listening. The debate swerved into uncomfortable territory. If Karlissa's claims held any truth, then Junior wasn't just surrounded by drama, he was molded by it. Not physically, but atmospherically. By decisions that seemed funny in real time, but catastrophic in hindsight. The narrative sharpened. Chaos wasn't collateral damage. It was origin. And that idea made the internet sit a little straighter. Because when you frame a situation like that, laughter stops sounding appropriate. Karlissa hinted that certain decisions from Chrisean, whether emotional, impulsive, or made with stubborn pride, complicated the clarity around Junior. That statements changed. That attitudes shifted. That details were blurred or rushed. She painted the image of someone acting first and explaining later, leaving the aftermath in scattered pieces. Her insinuations landed like a hammer on a fragile glass table. Not loud, but guaranteed to leave cracks. Some fans defended Chrisean, claiming motherhood is messy for everyone and no one has a perfect story. But even they admitted the timeline around Junior always felt tangled. Others went nuclear, saying Karlissa had no right to speak without proof. But the strangest thing happened. Those demands for proof only strengthened and her credibility. People don't demand proof from clowns. They demand it from people who sound dangerously close to being right. Blueface's silence made everything worse. When Hazel spoke out weeks ago, he mocked, joked, threw digital shade. When bloggers grilled him, he laughed. But Karlissa's revelations were met with eerie stillness. No denial, no tirade, no sassy subtweets. Just the kind of quiet that feels less like calm and more like a courtroom preparing for closing arguments. And that silence looked like validation to the public. Because if something was truly outrageous, Blueface wouldn't hold back. He torched the internet in 5 seconds. The absence of outrage looked too strategic. Conversations exploded around accountability. Could Karlissa be bitter? Sure, but could she also be telling an uncomfortable truth the public ignored because Chrisean's magnetic chaos made better entertainment than stability? Absolutely. Commenters began calling out the internet for glamorizing wild behavior while ignoring how much damage it caused. The same outbursts once praised as real energy were now being examined as symptoms of deeper issues that rippled into JR's young life. More influencers entered the battlefield. Some siding with Chrisean, some with Karlissa. Most staying vague enough to spark intrigue. The entire culture of online spectatorship zoomed in on this storyline because it stopped being mere celebrity gossip. It turned into a question of who really shapes the fate of a child caught between fame, chaos, and decisions too careless to rewind. People questioned what kind of energy surrounded Junior during pivotal moments. Whether instability seeped into the cracks long before any public scandal broke. And through it all, Karlissa kept repeating one message: this didn't have to happen. The emotional weight of that claim hit harder than any insult she could have thrown. Because if she was right, then all the confusion, tension, and swirling theories weren't born from mystery, but consequence. The result of emotional explosions treated as personality, of decisions made in heat, of choices that snowballed while the world thought it was just another viral moment. The internet loves a villain, but it hates accountability more. Karlissa twisted both. She didn't paint Chrisean as wicked. She painted her as reckless. And reckless is harder to dismiss. Recklessness leaves trails. It leaves marks. It leaves effects. Suddenly, Junior didn't look like a baby caught in drama. He looked like the silent center of a storm he never asked to enter. And if Karlissa's claims held even a grain of truth, then the storm wasn't random. It was built. Memes kept rolling. Podcasts kept speculating. Threads kept growing. Yet under the chaos sat a collective realization that the situation was deeper than viral chaos. Whether Karlissa exposed raw truth or simply drew public attention to cracks that always existed, the effect was irreversible. Chrisean's legend as the wild star suddenly came with an asterisk. And people, for the first time, looked beyond the entertainment and asked, what did that energy leave behind? And that's how a few calm sentences from Karlissa turned the internet upside down. Not with screaming, not with theatrics, but with conviction. Conviction that the story around Junior wasn't confusing by nature. It was made that way. And once that idea spreads, nobody looks at the saga the same again. In the days that followed, the internet settled into a strange tension, like a room full of people holding their breath, waiting for someone to crack. But nobody did. Blueface stayed eerily quiet. Karlissa moved like someone who said what needed to be said, and Chrisean posted through the chaos with her usual bulletproof confidence. Yet the audience didn't scroll past. They lingered. Because once doubt takes root, every gesture looks strategic, every smile looks defensive, and every non-response becomes suspicious. Comment sections turned into philosophical battlegrounds. Was Karlissa bitter or brutally honest? Was Chrisean misunderstood or irresponsibly chaotic? Was Junior simply a baby living life or the silent evidence of a storyline nobody wanted to discuss? And tangled between those questions lived the uncomfortable thought that the truth might not be clean. It might not be kind. It might be somewhere in the messy middle, shaped by decisions, actions, emotional detonations, and past moments everyone wished could be re-edited like Instagram drafts. Karlissa's earlier hints about choices echoing into JR's life took on a chilling aftertaste. She claimed she watched firsthand as confusion grew roots. That she saw decisions fueled by anger, pride, stubbornness, impulse, and revenge. That she tried to intervene, tried to warn, tried to demand a calmer path. But in her words, nobody listened. Everyone was too focused on the spectacle to consider the consequences. And now that the consequences finally became impossible to ignore, she refused to stay silent. The public, once entertained, began to feel complicit. Suddenly, the viral fights weren't funny. The impulsive lives didn't look exciting. The chaos felt like collateral in a story with a child at the center. They replayed every moment Chrisean made impulsive choices and wondered whether those moments spiraled into confusion around JR's early story. Whether medical decisions, emotional reactions, rushed choices, or unstable environments left cracks that only became obvious in hindsight. And if Karlissa held even a fraction of truth, then the narrative around Junior wasn't just drama. It was the aftermath of decisions that could have been steadier, clearer, safer. The internet's tone shifted from entertainment to interrogation. They wanted clarity. They wanted accountability. They wanted to know if Karlissa spoke from pain or from proof. The silence from inside the circle made it worse. Every missing explanation felt like confirmation. Every vague caption felt like avoidance. Every calm post from Karlissa felt like someone who knew time was on her side. Within days, media outlets grabbed the storyline like a lifeline. Podcasters debated whether unstable environments could shape early confusion in a child's life. Gossip channels reported on the growing cloud around JR's timeline. Panels began asking whether the glamorized chaos of Chrisean's brand became the very force that made JR's situation complicated long before anyone noticed. And while most of it was speculation, the target remained constant. The actions that Karlissa claimed set everything in motion. Meanwhile, Chrisean's loyal supporters fought back, defending her fiercely. They said motherhood doesn't come with a manual, that mistakes don't equate to blame, that Karlissa inserted herself too deeply into business that wasn't hers. But even many of those supporters admitted something felt unresolved. Something never lined up. And after Karlissa's comments, they looked at footage of Junior with a heavier heart, wondering if confusion built around him not by accident, but by the fallout of emotional choices made long before he could speak. The most haunting part wasn't the accusations, it was Karlissa's tone. She didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She didn't threaten to expose more, though everyone assumed she could. She simply spoke as though she'd been waiting for the world to catch up. She painted her story not as gossip, but as consequence. And that single shift created a wave that pulsed across the culture. What if the entertainment everyone laughed at for months left shadows behind, and Junior wound up living beneath them? Suddenly, the conversation turned inward. People who once cheered online toxicity and explosive relationships now questioned how much of that cheering felt irresponsible. Was instability romanticized? Did viewers encourage chaos instead of accountability? Were likes, shares, and applause just gasoline poured over a fire no one thought would spread? When Karlissa hinted that Chrisean's decisions shaped the mess around JR, decisions made in anger, or spite, or impulse, the audience looked at themselves too, wondering if they acted on, and Blueface, normally the king of digital pettiness, offered nothing but silence. He didn't deny. He didn't defend. He didn't dismantle Karlissa's claims. His quiet presence became another riddle piece. Some interpreted it as guilt, others as exhaustion, but most saw it as a crack in the armor, because a man who lives online breeds controversy and thrives on clapbacks doesn't usually go mute unless there's nothing easy to say. And that silence created a deeper suspicion than any response ever could. Chrisean, on the other hand, did what she always does, moved forward loudly, smiling here, parting there, acting like the internet's theories were dust in the wind. But even her confidence felt different. Sharp-eyed viewers watched her expressions, her pauses, her offhand comments. Every laugh became a mask. Every moment of seriousness felt like a tell. Whether it was true or not didn't even matter anymore. The belief that something seeded confusion around Junior, and that Karlissa linked that confusion to Chrisean's actions, shifted public perception in a way no PR cleanup could reverse. The fallout spread into reputation territory. Karlissa, once viewed as the unpredictable relative, became a voice people replayed with new respect. Her restraint looked dignified. Her timing looked intentional. Her refusal to drag Junior directly into the mess made her appear more protective than spiteful. And her insistence that actions, not fate, ignited the confusion around him turned her into a reluctant whistleblower instead of the villain she was once framed as. Chrisean's public image absorbed the shock like a body hitting cold water. The wild child narrative that once made her magnetic now became ammunition against her. Influencers argued that someone with emotional volatility shouldn't be shocked when others question how that energy affects a child's early world. Comment sections filled with sobering statements. It's not about hate. It's about responsibility. And no matter how many defunded her, that message lingered every time JR's name came up. The uncertainty around Junior, once brushed aside as drama noise, became the core of every conversation. The idea that decisions rushed, heated, public, shaped confusion around him gave people pause. It made the scandal less about gossip and more about consequence. Karlissa's claim that none of this needed to happen if choices were steadier and less impulsive became a haunting echo the internet couldn't shake. And in that realization lived the story's sharpest twist. Nobody wanted the blame to be real. Nobody wanted Karlissa to be right. But the possibility sat in the center of the conversation like a spotlight. Because if she was even half right, then everyone who watched, laughed, and reposted helped normalize chaos that may have spilled into a child's life. People looked at Junior with a kind of collective guilt, wondering whether the comments, memes, and applause were fuel instead of noise. Through it all, Karlissa didn't tremble. She said her truth and left the door slightly open, the kind of opening that promises more if the world isn't ready to hear it yet. She made it clear she didn't enjoy the fallout, but she wasn't about to rewrite her words to comfort strangers. She didn't ask to be believed. She only asked for people to stop pretending confusion happens without roots. And that subtle firmness made her message feel carved in stone instead of scribbled in chalk. Now the internet watches closely, because scandals don't end with silence. They simmer, they breathe, they evolve. Every post from Chrisean, every blink from Blueface, every whisper from anyone tied to Junior becomes evidence for someone's theory. Because once suspicion enters the storyline, uncertainty dies. And once Karlissa ripped the curtain, nobody could put it back without wondering what else was hidden behind it. Whether her claims were bitter, brutal, or brutally honest, the impact remains the same. The narrative around Junior will never be seen as clean again. The audience will always look at the story through the lens Karlissa handed them. And every future headline involving that child will be read with a small voice in the back of the mind saying, "Were the roots planted long ago?" Karlissa didn't just expose a controversy, she reshaped the foundation. She made the internet reconsider what chaos costs. And she reminded everyone that even the most viral personalities aren't exempt from accountability when children become part of the story. People may forget names, drama, memes, lives, but they won't forget when someone claims the fallout didn't appear by coincidence, but by cause. And if that cause traces back to choices, then the legacy of this scandal won't fade with time. It will age with it. If you're still here after all that, congratulations! You just survived a psychological roller coaster that makes true crime documentaries look like relaxation tapes. Karlissa dropped her claims like thunderbolts. The internet turned into a forensic lab. And suddenly, every breathing human with Wi-Fi became an expert on family dynamics, parenting decisions, and karmic consequences. Whether you believe her, fear she might be right, or just showed up for the emotional explosions, one thing is stamped in bold on this saga: the story isn't finished. Not even close. So before the next domino falls, before another live erupts, before someone else decides to accidentally slip details they swore they'd never say, do the sacred thing: smash that like button like it owes you apology money. Drop your wildest theory in the comments, because you never know who might reply with their own version of receipts. And subscribe like you're slamming a judge's gavel. Because around here, peace is temporary, drama is seasonal, and truth arrives late but loud. This channel is where whispers become headlines, hints become investigations, and inconvenient facts always surface. If Karlissa just cracked the floorboards beneath JR's story, then it's only a matter of time before someone else pries them open even wider. When it happens, you don't want to catch it secondhand through someone's blurry repost. You want it front row, loudspeaker, no dash filter. Because scandals don't expire. They reload. They respawn. They evolve into bigger, messier, harsher plot twists than anyone ever predicts. This is Scandal Spark, where the leaks get louder, the tea gets hotter, and the drama always burns. Gets hotter, and the drama always burns.